Finally, in SEAL training, there's a bell. All you have to do to quit is ring the bell. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to wake up at 5 o'clock. Ring the bell, and you no longer have to do the runs, the obstacle course, the PT, and you no longer have to endure the hardships of training. If you want to change the world, don't ever, ever ring the bell.
You are listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour presented by Kill Clip Performance Drinks.
Enjoy drinking Kill Clip after sweaty workouts, big rides, full rounds, long days, longer nights, or whenever you feel the need to get back up to full speed.
Kill Clip Performance Drinks for Warriors. Ignite, endure, recover. And now, Mark Zinno.
Welcome into another episode of Kill the Quit, brought to you by Kill Clip. I am your host, Mark Zinno. We appreciate you guys joining us every week. This week's Badassador, our guest, is a former Navy SEAL, former business owner, and member of the Virginia House of Delegates. He is John McGuire here on Kill the Quit. John, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me this morning.
All right, so there is a lot to get to and a lot to unpack in your story, and I made it seem all glorious, but the road to get where you were clearly wasn't easy. And we'll start back in your early childhood because that's really where the struggles happened. And as I understand it, when you were just 5 years old, you were kind of abandoned in Richmond, Virginia by your parents, and you had to go through a lot of, early life struggles in and out of foster care, 9 different elementary schools. Give me kind of your memories of growing up in that life.
Well, my wife doesn't like to say it, but I say it's debatable. I turned out okay. Yeah, but my mother and father, like many of us have people in our family, were impacted by, substance abuse, and they really didn't have their act together at all. And so, anyway, they basically there's 5 of us. So they took 3 of the kids, the 3 youngest ones, they went to go live with the grandparents. And they left me downtown city of Richmond on a corner because the grandparents said they couldn't take all 5, and my mom didn't know what to do. So anyway, the police found me. I've been in foster care, 9 different elementary schools. Got kicked out of school a little bit for fighting, but I'm a good boy now. But yeah, I've been thrown through drywall. All kinds of seen my foster parents arrested, different parents. But, no matter how bad it might sound or seem, we both know people got it way worse. But I say that adversity, you have a choice. You can become a victim or a fighter. What's really cool, though, is my grandfather fought in World War II. And he and my grandmother had raised their children. And they ended up, my dad got his act together a little bit, took the 3 younger kids. And then my grandfather and grandmother got my older sister and I, who had been separated, in foster homes and basically raised us through high school.
All right. Well, listen, let me kind of work through this with you. I get the point. Like, you can either be a victim or, you can turn it into a positive. But that's an adult decision, John. That's not something a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old should have to make or really is capable of making. So you look back on it and you say, yeah, I could have been a victim or I could have made it, into something positive in my life. But again, going through that at such a young age, when you look back on it, how did you handle that? Like, how did you survive day to day?
Well, I guess everybody's wired differently, but, you do what you have to do, and each experience prepares you for your next. But, pressure, makes you tough, so, you can't, if you want big biceps, you got to stress those biceps. So I guess all that stress taught me that I had to be self-reliant. And if you want to be strong, you got to make choices to be strong. So how did I get through it? I don't know. I mean, I certainly, believe it or not, some of the foster homes, it's interesting, 9 different elementary schools, many different families, you have many different rules. Like some might say you can't wear your shoes in the house. Some you can. So like most kids, they get a set of rules, and that's the rules their whole childhood. Imagine the family rules changing 9 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So but I remember at least a couple of the foster homes took me to church. And I still to this day remember Sunday school and some of the lessons and things like that. So even when I went to a foster home that didn't go to church, I would still pray by my bed at night. And one of the craziest stories is my Uncle Pat, who was a military guy, would come visit. And one of the things I prayed for, which is kind of a silly story, is I prayed for this mobile. And every day I prayed for that thing. And then one day he took me to Toys R Us and said, you can get anything you want, which was like a big deal back then. And so I was very tempted to get this and that and the other, but I had prayed for that Batmobile, so I made that Batmobile because I felt like it would have been a bad. You finally got a chance to get something you prayed for and you don't get it. I felt like that would be wrong. So, but anyway, lots of crazy experiences.
Not to play like psychologist or anything like that, but when you go through all that, do you have a relationship with your parents now? Are they still part of your life? Is there any resentment, anger, whatever it may be?
So my dad and I get along very well now. He stopped smoking and drinking on the same day, and I feel bad. I don't know when he stopped. I think he stopped 30 years ago, which is pretty amazing because I know a lot of strong men that I admire who have tried everything to stop drinking or tried everything to stop smoking and were not successful. I think finally my dad made the choice. And, you got people in your life that have substance abuse or whatever, and you love them, but you feel helpless because no matter what you want to do, it's their choice. But about 30 years or so, he made that choice. And so we have a pretty good relationship. My mom, kind of a weird story. We'll get into the SEAL thing later, but I was doing a counter sniper mission and I got doing a sit rep where I called in and I went to the extract zone, extract site, and I had to get out of the field. And I found out that my grandmother had passed away. I remember she had rescued me from the foster homes. And I was at the funeral paying my respects to her. And this woman tapped me on the arm and said, "How you doing, John?" And I said, "I'm doing all right. Who are you?" And she goes, "I'm your mom."
Wow.
Kind of a crazy reunion, right? But the weirdest thing is I didn't really feel anything. I guess if you don't really have a relationship with someone, it's probably something I got to deal with, but I don't know. So I know where she's at. I might talk to her once a year, but I don't really have much of a relationship there. Probably got to work on that.
No, look, I mean, again, I don't want to play amateur psychologist or anything like that. It's one of those things where, as a parent, I'm a father, I want to throw my arms around you, give you a hug, brother, and just tell you, hey, man, congratulations, one, you got through everything, you made it, and everything's okay. But nobody deserves that as a small child. That's not what the norm is, right? Kids are supposed to be cared for by their parents. And so when it doesn't happen, it's definitely heartbreaking. And you tell that story. I couldn't even imagine. I mean, a lot of people would go ballistic, right? In anger and be justified in doing so because the people who are supposed to care for you didn't. And, that's just tough, man. My heart goes out to you for it. It can't be easy.
Yeah. I don't even think of it that way. I think life is awesome and it's what you make it.
Sure.
And
yeah.
I think I'm a very positive person. I think that if you think about the men and women in uniform and the things that we do for our country, still very positive people. The brotherhood, the things we do, we realize that we're more successful when we're positive. And we also know that no matter how bad you think you have it, it could always be worse. We just know that if you fall down, you get back up. And if you fall down again, you get back up. And if you always get back up, you're always in the fight. So I'm very positive, feel very blessed. Good.
He is John McGuire, our guest here on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. All right, John, so let's kind of, if you can, how'd you get through it all as far as just managing to stay in school, get good grades if you could, move into high school, get through all the dark times and the bad stuff? What did you do? Did you play sports? Did you join clubs, run for student council, whatever it may be?
Well, I hate to tell you this, but I wasn't exactly the most academic guy. I always joke that when I graduated Henrico High School, I don't know if it's because they were being nice to me or they wanted to get rid of me.
Right.
But yeah, I got in fights a lot. I got kicked out of school a lot. But I did. Let's see. I played soccer. I ran cross country. I wrestled. In middle school, I played football a little bit. Let's see what else I did. I took high school. In high school, I took karate, and really wasn't much into it because I've been in fights with guys who said they took karate and it didn't go so well for them in the fight. But I had a bunch of buddies that talked me into it. And here's an interesting thing. So my sensei was a Green Beret in Vietnam. And back then they had this movie called Top Gun.
Yeah.
I was a teenage boy. It had all the girls, the motorcycles, the airplanes that are fast. So I ended up being the only kid in high school with a motorcycle. Really, the truth is, my three best friends, we all looked at these pictures of motorcycles and said, we're going to save all our money, and next year we're going to buy motorcycles.
Is that how you did it? Is that how you got the motorcycle? You just saved up and bought it?
Well, yeah, I worked really hard. I worked like 2, 3 jobs during the summer and all that. Well, my friends spent all their money, so when it was time to buy a motorcycle, they didn't have anything. So I was disciplined enough to save my money, so I bought the motorcycle. And of course, that was great because everybody wanted to ride, and it was pretty cool. But anyway, he said that why do you want to be a pilot? If you become a Green Beret, you are a weapon. And what do you think I said to him?
Hell yeah.
No, I said, no, I want to be a pilot.
Oh.
but
Seemed like a convincing argument.
Yeah, but then one day, well, the motorcycle thing and all that was cool. The airplanes are fast. But then one day, someone gave me a copy of a magazine called Gung Ho. And the funny thing is, people thought I was making this up until one Veterans Day, someone gave me a gift, and they actually found a copy of that magazine. But it was called Gung Ho, and it had a full 15, 20-page spread on Navy SEALs. And it said toughest men alive. And it said things like PT burnout, scuba diving, parachuting, sniper rifles, explosives, everything that any red-blooded American boy would like, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it said you had a better chance of being president of the United States than becoming a Navy SEAL. So it was just this crazy Navy SEAL issue. And I took that to my sensei, and I said, "What about these guys?" And he said, "They're a bunch of crazy mother
bleepers."
And, right. And then he said, "By the way, you're too small and you could never make it." And I don't know if that was a psychology or what, but he made it sound like it was the most impossible challenge.
How small was small at that time? How small were you?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I never thought of myself as being small. It's funny. I look at some old pictures of me and my brothers in the SEAL platoons back in the 90s, and you can visually see in the picture, I'm smaller than the guys, but my mindset during SEAL training and as a Navy SEAL is I was the same size as everybody else. But now looking at the pictures, I'm like, dang, I guess I was kind of small.
It's funny, John. I mean, I deployed with the SF guys, and it's one of the things I've learned through going through assessment and selection and talking to people. There are some of the scrawniest dudes who make it through, and some of these big muscle-bound guys, they get bounced out in the first week. They're just it's the mental game that they don't have, and despite all the physical attributes that they carry, mentally they're not cut out for it. And some of these smaller guys know their body, know what they can do, know what they can't do, and they're just more agile upstairs, so to speak, and that's what gets them through.
Yeah, certainly there are many men that are faster, stronger, and have much more success and accomplishments than me. But when I was in the SEAL team, I was the smallest guy in my platoon. But because of my wrestling background, karate background, and interest in martial arts, I won 75% of my fights. So I'd get some guy in a submission, and he was 260 pounds, and he's like, they just underestimate me because they assume. But if you don't have the right training, a smaller guy can whoop your butt.
Yeah.
But they nicknamed me Pitbull back in the SEAL team because I remember seeing my OIC had his hand on his head, just shaking his head because he was pissed that the small guy just choked out his big guy. But don't worry, these guys hit me in the head sometimes so hard my head went back and hit my butt, and I think I had a headache for 4 days. I mean, that had to be a concussion.
Right.
So you win some, you lose some.
So did your sensei tells you you're too small? That was fuel for the fire.
Yeah, it was, and but so I started. I was on the wrestling team, so I work out all the time. But I started doing some silly things. Like I took my motorcycle to the mountains, kind of broke a bunch of branches off to kind of hide it so nobody would steal it, and started running up and down mountains. I'd run all over the city of Richmond, carry heavy backpacks. Like anybody, you probably did the same thing, just because you want to serve your country, and it's supposed to be something that's so impossible. You've got to make sure you give yourself every possible chance to make it. So that's what I decided I wanted to do. I remember going down to Broad Street in Richmond, Virginia to the recruiter, and I took that ASVAB test. Now, you're talking about a guy who can barely get through basic high school classes. And I took this ASVAB, and I scored very high. The guy said it was one of the highest scores he'd ever seen. I don't know what that means, but he said it was a pretty high score. And he said I didn't qualify to be a SEAL. So he tried to convince me to go for another Navy program. So I walked over to the Marine recruiter and said, I want to be a Marine, because I got sick and tired of the guy. And finally the recruiter came back and said, all right, I'll give you a shot. So he gave me a shot at BUD/S. And we go from there.
So you were 18 right out of high school?
Right out of high school, went to Buds. Let's see, I was the worst swimmer on earth. The only thing I'd ever done was walk on my hands on the diving board, push off, do a flip, show off for the girls, swim 15 feet to the ladder. That's all I'd ever done. And now I want to be part of the most water-centric program in the world, which is kind of funny.
Right.
So, yeah, because I mean, it's a lot of guys, you typically, and I know you know this, but typically 200 men per class, usually 20 graduate.
Yep.
One class graduated 0. And a lot of people, I ask them, why do you think 0 graduated? And they have a lot of ideas. And I said, it's because we have a set of standards and it's nothing personal. You either meet the standards or you don't. Everyone doesn't get a trophy because, in combat, if you put together the wrong team, it could be really bad.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, we can't afford the luxury of a quitter in combat. So, in our class, we had 200 guys, 19 graduated. And, it was a lot of fun. It's interesting. Guys were, certainly we all have tough times during the training, but to be honest, every day was like, I couldn't believe I was there. Now this might sound kind of silly, but I was getting 3 meals a day. I was like, y'all can beat the crap out of me.
Yeah.
You know what I used to do? I used to take food and shove it down my shirt.
Really?
And I'd shove it down my shirt, taking food out of the chow hall, and we're running. And sometimes I would throw up and I just reach down and grab some more food and keep going. And people are like, where'd you get that food? So when guys were like crying and quitting and doing some crazy stuff, I was like, are you crazy? They're freaking feeding us. They can beat the crap out of me as long as I'm eating. So
well,
it feels different than some of the other Army stuff in that, in Hell Week, they feed you like horses. So, it's a week, pretty much no sleep, and they feed you every 6 hours, but it's all you can eat every 6 hours. And you got to, because you're burning so many calories. You're running everywhere, swimming everywhere, shivering. And of course, shivering it for a whole week straight is burning a lot of calories.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just pump you full of food. I don't know. That's kind of cool.
He is John McGuire, our guest this week on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff. When we come back, I do have one question I ask of every Navy SEAL that I want to ask you. And also we'll get to your time in the SEALs and everything you did there. That's coming up next on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour, presented by Killcliff Performance Drinks.
Killcliff, performance drinks for warriors to get you up, get you through, and get you back to full speed.
And now, back to the show with host Mark Zinno.
Welcome back to Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff. I am Mark Zinno, your host. Our guest this week is John McGuire, former Navy SEAL, business owner, motivational speaker, and member of the Virginia House of Delegates. We last left off, John, just got through SEAL training, and I wanted to ask you, because I ask this of everybody whenever I do my podcast or Kill the Quit here. When you go through BUDS, and for people who don't know this, there is an ability for people to walk out and quit on their own. There's a bell that they ring, and they say, look, I'm done, I'm dropping out. I can't take this anymore. I just want to go back to my normal life. When you hear that bell ring and you see guys walk out, what did it do for you mentally? Were you the kind of person who looked at it and said, I can't believe that guy dropped. Wow, that's unreal. Or was it like a motivational thing for you? It says, I'm never ringing that bell. That's never going to be me. What did that bell, when it went off in your ear, what did you think?
There's so many different emotions. And some of them might surprise you, but I don't really think about this question much, but let me tell you what comes to mind. A lot of times in BUDS, people want to be a SEAL for the wrong reason. And if your heart is not right, and if your mind is not right, I don't care how fit you are, you will not become a Navy SEAL. And so sometimes you'll have a guy who just looks like the guy everybody wants to look like. He's the strongest, he's the fastest and everything. And sometimes when he quits, 10 more guys quit, because in their mind, they're like, well, if he can't make it, how can I make it?
Yeah.
So you really got to have your heart right. And then sometimes you have a good buddy, like you guys have bonded, you've connected,
Yep.
And all of a sudden the guy's quitting. One time I was doing surf torture and we have our arms locked, and one of the guys tried to quit. So I held his arm tight so he couldn't get out of the surf, because I didn't want him to quit. So he got his arm loose and he punched me in the head. So I was like, well, go quit then. And then one particular situation is, we had a guy he was like we call him jellyfish, no backbone. Like he couldn't, well, he was like I hate to say it, but a real wimpy leader. And so when he quit, I actually had satisfaction, I was like, gosh, because he wouldn't stand up for anything. And so when he quit, that was actually, you don't normally get enjoyment out of somebody quitting, but in that particular example, I had some enjoyment. So I guess when you hear that bell, it's interesting. Like, I remember one time, there's just many different emotions depending on who the guy is and what the situation was. And sometimes you're like seeing a guy crying while he's ringing the bell. And I'm like, well, then don't ring the bell. But you don't know what's going on inside another person. But that goes back to what I said earlier is it's not what you look like, it's what you fight like. One thing we talk about in our country right now, how everybody's kind of sick and tired of all the divide. What I love about the military is we don't care what your political views are what. If we're defending each other, if we're on the same team, all that matters is the mission, and that we're not gonna let each other down. So not what you look like, it's what you fight like. And the cool thing about SEAL training is it doesn't matter what you look like. You either have the right heart and the right mindset, or you're not going to make it.
That guy that you bonded with, that you locked arms with and tried to stop, did you ever speak to him again?
Never saw him again, never heard from him again.
Really?
In fact, it's interesting is that's mostly the way it is in SEAL training. It's just the attrition. It just goes down, 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 down. And but there was one particular guy. This guy, when I was going through A school back then, you went to something called A school before you went to Buds. He looked like Arnold, just ripped, lifted weights. I'm like some skinny wrestling kid. And everybody in the classroom would always say, he's probably going to be a SEAL. John's probably not going to make it. He looks like he's going to be a SEAL. John doesn't. Well, during drown proofing, he managed to get his hands loose. And so the instructors went to tie his hands back, and he said, screw this, I'm out of here. And I remember that guy, but I remember during Hell Week, you're not supposed to cheat or you basically got to follow a plan. And this guy, we were having a room inspection, and I'm standing outside my room, and all of a sudden I smell hot food in my room. So when you're standing at attention, you can't look around or nothing. But when the instructors were in and out of other rooms, I looked in my room, and there was a plate of hot food. If the instructors would have caught that, they would have beat the crap out of me. He was trying to be nice because, he was trying to help me out. But I was like, man, you're about to give me some big trouble. So I basically, when the instructors went in another room, I reached in there and smacked that plate as hard as I could under my bed and stood back out my room at attention. And they never caught it. And I remember after Hell Week, all these dried up green beans and everything or whatever he had. So for whatever reason, that particular guy I remember, probably because he continued to try to help. But yeah, that kind of helped get you in trouble. But usually you don't remember the guys that quit too much because you're going so fast, so forward. It's hard to think about it.
John, any sense of when you graduate from Buds and you get to put on that trident and, you have that just amazing moment in your life, ever kind of look back and think about what you went through in your childhood and wonder how the hell you got to that point?
No, I mean, gosh, at this point, I'm just enjoying life, man. Obviously we got some ups and downs and deaths in the family, and I've been to a lot of funerals since 9/11, but gosh, I guess I don't look back too much. I just moving forward and accomplishing missions and enjoying life because life is short. But no, what I loved about getting my trident is I felt like I'd won the Super Bowl, because when you constantly hear someone say you can't do something and you do it, but ultimately you got to remember it's an honor to serve our country, and there are many ways to serve, and there are people that have never even considered making it through the first day of SEAL training, but they've done some amazing things for our country. So, but no, it's a great feeling.
So you were in the SEALs from 88 to 98, obviously pre 9/11. Now for, those who aren't military, you don't know this, but the SEALs are always doing something that is related to combat or preventing bad things from happening to America. So it's not like you sat on your hands for 10 years and said, gee, we're just waiting for the war to start. No, that's not the way it went. So, obviously some of the stuff you can't talk about due to the nature of the missions and things of that nature, but your 10 years in the SEALs, I know it's hard to encapsulate it here in a few minutes, but give me kind of an overview of what that was like for you.
Well, it's, it's a brotherhood. Gosh, some of the most amazing men I've ever met that to this day are considered mentors and people I look up to. But fast paced, 6, 7, 8 month deployments. I remember in 95, I was gone 11 months. And you think about that, the men and women today in uniform do more in a year than I probably did in 10 years. Certainly I was doing counter drug missions all over South Central America. I served in Europe and Asia and a bunch of other places, but most of my time was South Central America. But yeah, just some amazing people. I guess you know what it's like. I mean, being around the guys, and on the mission side of it is incredible. But even I guess you work hard, you play hard, and yeah, I just miss the brotherhood. It's great.
No, certainly. I mean, do you look back at some of the missions and some of the things that you did with kind of, I don't believe that happened, or was it just fond memories? Was it, crazy times?
Well, I've jumped out of helicopters before they crashed.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, we've got people who got it way worse. What else? I've got 29 broken bones. I probably shouldn't joke about this, but I tell people, you know what that means? And they go, what? And I go, that means I've had more fun than you. Or maybe I'm not that smart.
Or you just have a different definition of fun than most of us.
That's right. Yeah, but I mean, if you come to the team every day and there's some guy with a leg cast on or arm cast on or something, and you're like, well, what happened to you? Oh, night jump. Maybe his gear got hung up on something or he hit something. We had one guy, his parachute caught on a cliff on a jump at night, and it swung him right into the cliff. Oh. Yeah, he spent about a year in the hospital, kind of recovering from that. But anyway, I mean, it's 99% way more positive than that. I mean, but it's a tough job. I mean, you're pushing motorcycles out of airplanes, jumping out after them. You're pushing boats out of airplanes in the middle of the ocean at night, jumping out after them. You're locking out of submarines. But I mean, I love all that stuff. I mean, that stuff's great. I remember one time I was doing something in the Bahamas where we had to get these guys into a helicopter basket to get them to, they were from a ship, to get them to the beach. And they needed a guy to be under the helicopter, which is like a hurricane, to get those guys in the basket, which is quite a bit of a workout.
I would imagine.
But of course, I'm the first guy to raise my hand. Hey, I want to be in there, because it's like a wrestling match trying to get these guys that are kind of scared to death and panicky into a basket and get them up and get them to a beach. But no, it's good times.
So why'd you decide to leave the SEALs? I mean, 10 years, obviously a really long time, but why did you not make it a full 20 and a full life in the SEALs? So
everybody back then, I don't know if it's still, they're like, if you do 10 years and one day, you might. So at the 10-year mark in the military is where you got to make your decision.
Right.
And, and I'm not complaining at all. I loved every bit of it. In 95, like I said, I was gone 11 months. And my wife, I got an assignment to a pretty cool SEAL team, which would keep me very busy. And my wife said, I'll see you in 3 years. And I'm like, what do you mean? She was basically tired of all the travel and everything. And maybe I wasn't the best communicator. Obviously, it takes two to tango. But she was sick of it. And so I figured, man, I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to get out. I'm going to be a better father, be a better husband. And it didn't work out. Had I known it wouldn't work out, I probably would have stayed in. But we ended up getting divorced like a couple of years later. So I got out, figured I was going to turn it all around. And so I think kids, I don't know if you know, I have 5 beautiful children.
Yeah. Wow.
My current wife says I'm number 6. But I'm working. They're the best part about life.
Absolutely. Any regrets about the way things turned out?
I think God has a plan, and things always work out. So I think everybody says I need to write a book. I mean, I think everybody could write a book. But if I did write a book, the chapter I would be least proud of is that I got divorced. I mean, nobody wants to get divorced, but I couldn't be happier than I am right now. I have 3 children from my previous marriage, and my current wife, my wife now, she had 2 children from her marriage, so we have 5 combined, and they are just amazing. The strangest thing though is I must be getting old because our youngest is at his second year at the University of Kentucky.
Wow.
So, yeah, I know. I mean, gosh, time flies. But I just turned 50 a couple of weeks ago.
Amen, brother.
But I feel good, man. I'm doing push-ups and running and swimming and carrying sandbags, and I feel good.
And changing the state of Virginia for the better. How's that sound, huh?
Yeah, I think that's actually fun. Before I run out of breath, I want to help as many people as I can believe in themselves and realize that if we work as a team, we can move mountains. And so in everything that I do, I bring that philosophy of being positive and teaching leadership, because, leaders don't hope. They've got to be active. They've got to get in there and inspire and motivate and lead people to a vision or a target and a plan, and they've got to lead and refocus their team, because we're humans, we lose our focus. And so leadership gets you refocused on the goal, and you achieve that. And so that's what I teach with football, basketball teams, and corporate teams all over the world. It's a lot of fun.
Here's John McGuire, our guest here on Kill the Quit. Now, I was just going to transition to life after the SEAL team. Obviously, you had a plan, or maybe you didn't. Did you know what you wanted to do when you got out of the SEALs, what the next phase of your life was?
So that's interesting. So I got out September 1998, and I got a job with Nextel. It's a cell phone company.
Oh, yeah, I remember them. The beep, 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 beep. Those guys.
Yep, like a little hand radio thing.
Yep, yeah.
I got a job with those guys, and my boss, he had a huge gut. He had a big belly. I don't mean to be negative, but that's what he had. And he would never look me in the eyes. So he lacked confidence. He lacked fitness. And then he would give me something to do for the day, and I would get it done by 11 a.m. and say, what's next? And he had nothing for me. And, and so I thought he lacked leadership. He lacked all the things that we learned in the military. And I had this idea of starting a business. And, there's some fear involved with starting your own business. But he bored me more than I was afraid to start my own business. Like, he tipped the scale because he bored me to death. And they say there's nothing more dangerous than a bored frogman. So he bored me. So I drew out a business plan outline, and I started a business called SEAL Team PT. The PT stands for physical training, not part-time. So it's it's an outdoor fitness class, and it incorporates teamwork and leadership and communication along with fitness. Because I was a sniper instructor in SEAL team, and I thought about creating a shooting team and doing all this other stuff. But, after Columbine and all that, I was like, well, what's the most important thing? It's the person behind the rifle or behind the equipment. So I decided, how do you work on the human being? And so I do that through teamwork and leadership and fitness. And so I started that in September 1998. And in just the last 12 months alone, 6 young men that I mentor became Navy SEALs. Wow. So I get to fly out there to California, pin their tridents on. It's kind of cool. We've helped the guy just got back from his second tour to Afghanistan. He became a combat rescue officer with the Air Force Pararescue. And we've helped guys come Green Berets, Rangers, truck drivers, whoever in the military all the time. And it's really cool because they text me pictures all the time of them doing something cool, like climbing ice with ice axes or jumping a vehicle or, skinning a rattlesnake. And they go, what are you doing sitting behind a desk? They're always giving me a hard time. But it's really nice to kind of give back to our community to help mentor these young people, because, freedom isn't free. And I think that one of the big things in the SEAL community, and it's probably in all of our communities in the military, is to pay it forward and to mentor and to be able to see these young people be successful. I mean, there's a lot of joy in that.
I can only imagine, and building something from the ground up also, has its own rewards. When you kind of look back at what you've created with this company and the amount of people you've been able to impact, what does that say to you every day about what you do?
Well, I'll tell you, we started in September 1998. I had 5 people in the first class, and no one came back. Somebody said I needed to work on my people skills. So I started asking for feedback, like, what'd you like, what'd you not like? And not me, but we shaped the company. We shaped the company based on feedback. And gosh, now we're in several cities. We celebrate 20 years this Saturday, 22 September. So we'll celebrate 20 years of changing lives, and it's turned into a lot of things. We're in Washington, D.C. every morning. We're in Richmond, Virginia every morning, Charlottesville, Virginia every morning, West End, Virginia. But one day I had a high school football coach say to me, hey, can you teach my football team some leadership and teamwork? And of course, I'm a small part of the success, but they won the state championship. Again, I'm a small part of that. Great coaches, great players. But then the team that got second place hired us the next year, and then they won the state championship. Again, we're a small part of that. But so then next thing you know, we're working with Penn State, VCU, Texas, and universities all over the country. So then I had a corporate team call me up and said, hey, can you teach our corporate team some leadership? And gosh, now we're training corporate teams in Rome, Malaysia, Argentina, Honduras. I just went up to Boston to work with MIT on leadership. We just worked with Amazon, their top leadership, Universal Studios. I mean, it's just amazing. So it's an honor and a privilege to be able to help people improve. And I'm no genius. I just take what my brothers taught me about respect and teamwork and leadership and caring about your people. And if you do that, you can do some really great things.
You know what's baffling, John? Just as a side note, when you think about a Fortune 500 company, or you think about a Division I football team, and you think about success and what it takes to be at the highest level of those particular industries, you almost assume that leadership is something that would be at the highest level in order to do what they do. And the fact that they have to come calling to people like you, to former military members, to be able to learn about what real leadership is about is almost mind-blowing. Because to attain that level of success with minimal or substandard leadership, I don't know how it happens.
Well, I think that, I see where you're coming from, but I think that you have to always be innovating. A tree is either growing
Or it's
or
dying.
dying.
Yeah.
It doesn't hang out. And businesses have to always be trying new things. So I always give leaders credit when they choose someone like myself, as I say, hey, that shows that you're thinking outside the box and you're trying different things. Because if you do what you always did, you're going to get what you always got. But I tell you what's interesting. We had a team in Washington, D.C. call me up, and the coach said, look, we haven't won a championship in 40 years. Now they've won 2 just by changing their mindset. We had a CEO of a $2 billion company call me up just out of the blue and said, hey, I want you to know, after you worked with our leadership team, we had the most profitable quarter in the history of our company. And again, I'm no genius at all. I'm just sharing what we learned in the military, because in the military, whether we win or lose means whether or not we live or die. So the principles of teamwork and leadership and communication and chemistry and all that stuff are crucial. Now, again, there are many people that have way more experience in that arena than I do, but it's certainly what my brothers taught me. And I just share the message of respect and teamwork and getting to know your people. If you worked for me and you genuinely knew I cared about you, you would run through a brick wall for me.
Amen. Yeah.
And so it's really very simple. Now, it's interesting. I have a really, I call him a badass SEAL because he's done 14 tours in Afghanistan, and he knows that I had 6 guys make it through BUDS this year. And he's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Man, I've been trying to get a guy through for the last few years, and none of them made it." I know what it is. I think my company name attracts the guys that are interested in trying to take it up a notch, but also I have the format, the program, and every day where I'm seeing these guys every day, and they're constantly hearing this beat to a drum of being selfless and giving it all you have, and respect. I mean, they hear that every day. It begins to shape your mind and your body.
He is John McGuire, our guest this week on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff. Coming up next, John's trip into politics and the Virginia House of Delegates. Hear that story coming up next on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff.
You are listening to the Kill the Quit podcast hour, presented by Killcliff Performance Drinks, proud partner of the Navy SEAL Foundation.
Welcome back to Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff. I am Mark Zinno, your host. This week's guest, John McGuire. As we mentioned, former Navy SEAL, business owner, motivational speaker, and member of the Virginia House of Delegates. John, your business is off the ground. It's running well. You're clearly impacting lives, and politics comes calling. Well, how do politics come calling for you, and why did you make the decision to get into politics?
Well, I got to tell you, I was sick and tired of all the divide in our country. In the military, I learned to love all people, and you realize that if somebody saves your life, you don't care if they're black or white or pink or blue. You don't care their religion, their political view. I mean, we have an incredible country, and so many different ideas and ways of thinking help the United States lead the world in art and science and technology and everything. So I'm tired of all the divide in our country. I think many great Americans have given their life for this incredible country, and I want to make sure that it doesn't get destroyed by the wrong people. So, I want to bring people together because we got a lot of divide. So my oldest son went in the Navy. So proud of him. I was like, well, man, can I go back in the Navy? How do I serve again? And this gentleman named Peter Farrell retired. And I thought, well, somebody called me up and they said, you're always talking about wanting to serve. Peter Farrell's retired. Why don't you run for his seat? And it's in the Virginia House of Delegates. So I said, sure, what's the gig? And he said it was 60 days a year. So I fell for that one. But I said, sure, I can do 60 days a year. But it's actually full-time all year round. And they didn't tell you had to knock doors. They didn't say that you had to make thousands of phone calls and raise a lot of money and do all that. But so I guess a year and a half ago in March, I put in to run for the Virginia House of Delegates. And the next thing you know, I didn't know this, is that I was in a 6-way Republican primary.
Wow.
So I thought it would be just me, but it was 6-way Republican primary. And 2 of the gentlemen that I ran against had been involved in politics for years. And, life has a lot of repeat moments, when people say you can't do something. So I started hearing these things like, you don't know anybody, you have no experience, you have no chance. And then I started hearing these opponents in debates and on TV saying that John doesn't work hard, his fundraising is abysmal, and this sort of thing. But while they're saying that, I'm getting up at 5 a.m., going to bed at midnight, 7 days a week, just grinding. And I won a 6-way Republican primary by 8%. And they had me on the radio afterwards, and they said, hey, so what do you think about these guys talking about how you don't work hard and this sort of thing? And I just said, where I come from, winners focus on winning, and everybody else focuses on winners. And I said, I'd rather talk about lowering taxes, creating jobs, better supporting our veterans, our law enforcement, our first responders. And I just kept on message and stayed positive. And so in November, 2 newspapers said we had the largest Republican win in Virginia. So, and I think I brought a lot of people to the table that wouldn't normally vote for Republicans. I know that because I had people come on my Facebook page and say, look, I would never support a Republican, but I know the man and I'm going to support you. And I think that I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. If you have a good idea, you have a good idea. And to me, it should be what's best for Virginia, what's best for the United States. Now, that doesn't mean I'm compromising my conservative principles at all. In fact, I had a guy who was a Democrat come up to me and he goes, I thought you were my boy. Why'd you vote that way? And I said, I'm still a Republican. I'm still going to be conservative in my votes. But yeah, it's been quite an adventure so far.
What's illuminating about that? I went through a similar experience. A guy I deployed with back in 05 and 06, Green Beret. His name was Tommy Sowers. They're just a West Point guy, just a fantastic individual. And he went to run for office in Missouri. And he actually reached out to me when he decided to run and asked me to do a video for him, and I was more than happy to do it. And then he was a liberal, he's a Democrat, and he was running on a Democratic ticket in Missouri, and I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, registered Republican. And I was more than happy to do a video for him, and I highlighted exactly what you said there. I said it's not about politics or views or anything else. To me, it's about the man. It's about the leader. And he was somebody that I would have followed into the gates of hell if he had asked me to, because he was that type of leader. And that's easy for me to get behind as an individual. It doesn't really matter if we disagree on how much taxes we should pay or any of those things. To me, it was about, I know that at his core, he has the best interest of everybody at heart. And I believe in what he says and who he is and how he goes about things, because I know that guy is a leader and I'm willing to follow him. And that was the message I sent out for him. He was greatly appreciative. Unfortunately, he didn't win. But, I think that sentiment right there, what you're expressing, is something that we all learn in the military.
Right. And I love having coffee with someone who disagrees with me, because maybe at the end of that coffee or lunch or whatever, they're a little bit better and I'm a little bit better. But I got to tell you some really good news is my SEAL brothers told me I must have lost my damn mind to run for office. But they supported me. They'd come out from Virginia Beach, some active SEALs and everybody else. And some of the guys even knocked doors with me. It was just great. And some of them gave me money and everything else. And we had a big win and we did great. And I had people say to me, you'll never win, but we won. And then they said, now that you won, you won, but you'll never get anything done. And I got to tell you, there was a newspaper, and I can send you the article if you're ever interested. But the first week in the General Assembly, the newspaper headline said, freshman delegate McGuire just saved Virginia $100 million.
Wow.
And our Speaker of the House of Delegates came into our caucus and he said, as a freshman delegate, you can't get a better headline than this. And what's important about this is that this was an 8-year issue. They've been battling it for 8 years. So I put in a bill to fix it. And they kind of laughed at me like, hey, new guy, we've tried that for 8 years. What makes you think you're going to solve it? And I want to tell you how I solved it, because I think that'll explain a lot. Is basically I put in a bill. And when you put in a bill for a new law, you attract people to come visit you that are happy. But you also attract the people on the other side that are not happy. So when the people that came in that were unhappy, they actually said some things to me like, you seem like a nice guy. We don't want to embarrass you in committee. We strongly recommend you pull your bill, which I was shocked that someone would come talk to me like that. But instead of fighting them, I said, hey, look, I really respect what you do, but this is very important to the people in my district. What are your objections? So I wrote down all the objections, and I set up a second meeting with about 8 to 10 people. And by the end of that second meeting, we had everything they wanted 8 years ago done. And this guy in the corner of the room had tears in his eyes. And I was like, are you all right, man? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, you don't know what we've been through for 8 years. I can't believe you solved this in just 2 days. And I said, well, that's where you're wrong. I didn't solve it. We solved it. It's called teamwork. And so, I think that's my purpose in politics, is bringing people together. Because I got to be honest with you, I didn't know if that was a Democrat problem or a Republican problem, but I thought it was a good thing to solve for Virginia. Turns out the guy was Republican, but I didn't really ask him that. I just knew that it was a problem that made sense, that needed to be solved. And we solved it. And then another issue is a veteran ID issue in Virginia. We solved this one, and I had a 15-year senator come into my office, and he said, John, how the heck did you get that done? And I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, I've been trying to do that for 10 years. And so we're solving problems by bringing people together and listening to them. And, I always say in business, surround yourself with people smarter than you, and you can get some things done. But one thing that's really funny is whenever you put a bill in for a law, you get a partner or a co-patron. So if you have 100 delegates, usually you get 2 co-patrons or you get 5 co-patrons. So on this particular bill, I told them, hey, I'm going to get 100 co-patrons. And they laughed. And I'm like, what's the inside joke? They're like, dude, nobody gets 100 co-patrons. They usually get 2 or 5. Well, I said, well, I'm going to get 100. And I got 100. I would catch people in the parking deck, the garage. They'd run down the hallway. They can't outrun me. And then they were joking in my caucus. The Navy SEAL guys jumping out of the bushes getting signatures. But if you want to win, you got to bring people together. So I got every Democrat on board. I got every Republican in the House and the Senate. And then every time I saw the governor, I would say, you better not veto my bill. And after the 5th time, he goes, I'm not going to veto your bill. And we kind of developed a friendship. Even though he's a Democrat, you got to work with these people. They're still Americans. And I got to tell you, if our country were ever invaded and my neighbor and I had to stand side by side, we wouldn't care if you were Democrat or Republican. Right. We would be Americans. And I like to think of it that way. We should be Americans first. Because I got to tell you, our enemies of our country love all the divide in our country right now. But if we can come together, we're much stronger. So that's the message I'm trying to put and trying to be in politics and everything about my life is being a team. You're way more strong, way more successful.
He is John McGuire, our guest here on Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff. Couple of final thoughts here. What was a tougher challenge for you? The physical challenge of getting through buds and Navy SEALs, or the kind of mental grind that is politics every day?
Well, I got to tell you, you're a veteran as well. Our ideas of teamwork and leadership are a little bit different than what I'm experiencing. However, you can complain or you can be part of the solution. So only thing that we can only control ourselves, but you can lead by example, start to build a team one by one. And but anyway, I think I'm trying to bring people together and realize that, we will be much more successful if we can work as a team. Yeah. So what's more challenging? It's a different kind of challenge, but I think everything in my past have prepared me for this. And I know nothing great has ever been done alone, and any success, whether it be getting through buds, becoming a successful Navy SEAL or business owner, or even in politics, is by building a network of friends. So, a team.
John, you seem to you give me the impression that, the train is always moving forward, not like you ever circle back for much, both mentally and just kind of in stages of life. Between owning the business and now being in politics, do you have an end state in politics? Is there something more that you want? Do you want a higher office or anything like that? Or are you kind of content where you are? What's kind of next?
Yeah, I don't know. I just I want to be where I'm effective. I told people. Well, I don't know if I really told people this, but I was certainly thinking this. When I wanted to be a SEAL, everybody said you're too small, you'll never be a SEAL. We did it, but who wants to be a SEAL if you're not effective?
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
You start a business. Who wants to be in business if you're not effective? Who wants to get elected to office if you're not effective? Like, I don't want to be elected to be like, yeah, that guy was he was in the House of Delegates. That's not the reputation I'm trying to do. I don't want to embarrass the brotherhood of my SEAL brothers. I hope that, one thing they taught us is don't ever embarrass the brotherhood. But I hope that I can make the people in my life, including you and your audience now, proud. And so I think in that way, every decision I make is pretty important to me. So people ask me all the time lately, do you want to run for higher office? And I said, well, let me get through this and make sure I'm effective at this. And, God's got a plan. We'll see what's next. But right now, I'm just trying to learn and be the best delegate I can be. 8 U.S. presidents come from Virginia. And I think just about all of them served in the House of Delegates. And I represent District 56, which was Patrick Henry's seat.
Oh, wow.
The 400-year-old, we're the oldest legislative body, I think, in the world. And our Capitol Police celebrate this year their 400th year. They're the oldest law enforcement unit, I think, in the world. And it's some big shoes to fill. So right now I'm just trying to make sure this is it. And I might only do this for 2 years and they decide they found a better man or woman for the seat. And that's okay, because I got a great family and a great business. But if I can be effective all I can say is this, is for the time that I have, I'll give it everything I got.
That's all you can do, right? I mean, you can affect what you can affect, and whatever you can't. But the mentality with which you approach it with is refreshing, because it's just not something we see. There's the amount of agendas that you deal with in politics every day are probably too numerous to count. But the idea of bringing people together to get things done is a lot tougher than it seems, especially in 2018.
Yeah, and I hope this is not the wrong thing to say, but it's been a lot of fun. I've been in debates and everything. People are like, you better look out, there's a debate. I couldn't wait for the debate. I'm a competitor. I like to compete. And of course, I'm putting 2-3 hours a night going over flashcards and getting ready, because, you got to be prepared for whatever you do. But I mean, if you spend 2-3 hours a night prepping for a debate, you can't wait for the debate, and, I don't know. I'm a competitor. I like to compete, and I want to affect changes, and that's just how I'm wired. And I imagine anybody in the military is probably wired that way. But it's an honor to serve. And I don't know if it'll be 2 years or 10 years or whatever it is, but it's an honor and a privilege. And yeah, it's great.
Great stuff. Well, listen, John, congratulations on all your success. It certainly was an early life of adversity, but a later life of prosperity, and you've certainly done everything that you needed to do and more. But we wish you continued success, and we appreciate you being part of Kill the Quit.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
This has been another edition of Kill the Quit, brought to you by Killcliff. I'm your host, Mark Zinno. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next week.
WFOM
and W292EV Marietta,
a Dickey broadcasting station.
Live from the Wellstar Health System Studios.
1230 and 106.3 FM, The Sports X.